It happened in the blackest hours before dawn, when the Philippine Sea was still, and the world believed nothing could pierce its silence. Then, without warning, the ocean erupted. A thunderous, concussive force rolled across the waves as one of China's newest carriers shuddered under the violent impact of a weapon no one saw coming. The strike was precise, merciless, and devastating. Naval analysts watching the situation from secure operations centers froze. How could a ship encircled by destroyers, bristling with defenses, be struck in absolute silence? What invisible hand had breached China's shield? The answer lay deep beneath the surface, where a silent wolfpack of U.S. Virginia-class Block V attack submarines prowled patient, invisible, and armed with the deadly Mk-48 ADCAP torpedo. Was this the moment that would redefine naval warfare in the Pacific? If you demand clear-eyed military insight, like, subscribe, and leave your thoughts, because the untold story is only beginning. By 4:45 a.m., the Chinese carrier group had entered what their commanders believed was a secure transit corridor, escorted by Type 055 destroyers and layered with anti-submarine patrols. Yet, deep beneath the surface, American sonar arrays were already painting a perfect picture of their every move. Inside the steel hull of USS South Dakota, crewmen whispered over encrypted comms. Orders were crisp, cold, final. This was not an exercise. This was a preemptive counter to a carrier force inching too close to U.S. allies' territorial waters. The tension was razor sharp. One wrong move and the Philippine Sea could ignite into a full-scale naval war. Could America's silent hunters strike without revealing their hand? Or would the dragon sense the trap? At precisely 500 hours, the Philippine Sea was still cloaked in darkness. The Chinese carrier Fujian moved steadily on a northwest course, its massive deck illuminated only by the faint glow of red navigation lights. 4 escorting Type 055 destroyers maintained tight formation, their towed array sonars scanning the depths. Above, a pair of Z-20 Farad anti-submarine helicopters swept low over the water, dipping sonar buoys in methodical arcs. From the outside, it was an impregnable fortress at sea. But appearances in modern naval warfare are a dangerous illusion. Nearly 200 nautical miles away, the USS South Dakota, a Virginia-class Block V attack submarine, adjusted depth to 250 feet. Her commander, Captain William Hartley, studied the updated acoustic map projected on the combat information display. It was a perfect chessboard of movement. Chinese destroyers here, a trailing supply ship there, the carrier in the center, like a king surrounded by loyal knights. And yet, Hartley's instincts told him something the map could not. The formation was predictable, too predictable. The South Dakota was not alone. Flanking her position to the north was USS Delaware, and to the south USS Colorado. Together, these 3 subs formed the Silent Wolfpack, a coordinated strike group trained for high-risk, deep penetration ambushes. Their weapons: the May-48 Advanced Capability Torpedo, a weapon designed to travel over 25 nautical miles, home in on its target with active and passive sonar, and deliver a warhead capable of snapping a ship's keel. 5-10 hours. The Fujian's group increased speed to 20 knots. Signals intelligence from a P-8 Ampere Poseidon patrol aircraft, loitering far beyond Chinese radar range, confirmed what U.S. intelligence suspected. The carrier was moving to conduct a high-visibility, freedom of navigation patrol near disputed waters claimed by both the Philippines and China. The timing was deliberate 2 days before a scheduled defense summit in Manila. Captain Hartley spoke quietly into his headset. All units, execute Delta pattern. This was the maneuver that would bring the Wolfpack into a converging firing position without crossing the enemy's sonar detection arcs. South Dakota dipped another 30 feet, reducing her speed to 4 knots slower than a man jogging so quiet that even the ship's internal pumps shifted to ultra-low acoustic mode. 5:20 hours. In the Combat Direction Center of the Chinese destroyer Xianyang, sonar operators picked up faint anomalies, minute fluctuations in the water column that could be anything from whale pods to thermal layer disturbances. The commanding officer ordered a helicopter sweep to investigate. A Z-20 Farad lifted off from the destroyer's deck, dropping dipping sonar arrays into the black water. It heard nothing. The U.S. subs were hugging a cold thermal layer, masking their presence entirely. Then came the first twist of the knife. Without ever breaching the surface, the Delaware launched two unmanned underwater vehicles, each the size of a small car. Their mission: get close enough to the Chinese screen and emit misleading acoustic signatures, decoys that mimic the sound of diesel-electric submarines. Within 15 minutes, Chinese destroyers began repositioning, tightening their sonar focus toward the false contacts. This opened a narrow but critical gap in the defensive ring. 5:40 hours. The South Dakota glided into that gap like a shadow. Captain Hartley's fire control team locked the Mach 48 ADCAPS targeting system onto the carrier's acoustic signature, unique and unmistakable, a deep rhythmic thrum from its propulsion plant. But Hartley did not fire. Not yet. Rules of engagement demanded a confirmation of hostile intent, and the commander knew this engagement was as much about deterrence as destruction. Instead, the wolfpack sent a coded burst transmission to U.S. Pacific Fleet Command. Target acquired. Awaiting final authorization. Up in the skies, two F-35C Lightning II fighters from USS Carl Vinson Carrier Strike Group orbited silently over the horizon. Their advanced sensors fed additional targeting data to the subs below, confirming the Chinese formation's course and speed. Then came the signal Hartley was waiting for. A high-priority encrypted message. If shadowed or locked by hostile targeting radar, you are cleared for engagement. 600 hours. That moment came sooner than expected. The Chinese carrier's radar suite suddenly painted the South Dakota's position, proof they had detected something unusual in the deep. The move was bold, perhaps even reckless. Hartley gave a single nod. Match bearings and fire two fish, spread pattern. The torpedo room came alive in absolute silence, except for the sound of compressed air launching the first Mk-48. Seconds later, a second torpedo left the tube. Both accelerated to over 50 knots, dropping into a deadly weaving hunt path. Chinese sonar screamed warnings across the carrier group. The destroyer Nanchang pivoted hard to port, launching anti-submarine rockets in the suspected firing zone. The Z-20Fs scrambled to deploy countermeasures, flooding the water with noisemakers. The first torpedo slammed into a decoy, a direct hit that detonated harmlessly but shook the carrier's escort line. The second torpedo continued its relentless run, closing to less than 500 yards from the Fujian's starboard side. And then silence. Hartley had ordered a mid-run detonation, a tactic designed not to sink the target but to cripple its operations with shock damage. The blast wave rippled across the hull-bending radar masts, knocking aircraft from deck positions and stunning crew members. Above the surface, the Chinese formation scattered, unsure if more strikes were inbound. Beneath the waves, the wolfpack melted back into the thermal layer, vanishing like ghosts. But the message had been sent. The Philippine Sea was not uncontested. 6:15 hours. The Philippine Sea had transformed from calm expanse to a theater of controlled chaos. The Chinese carrier Fujian slowed to 15 knots, her massive hull shuddering from the earlier shockwave. Flight operations were suspended, damage control crews racing across her deck in orange fire-retardant gear, checking for stress fractures and systems failures. Though the carrier still floated, the psychological damage was severe. Someone had just slipped through her defenses. In the Combat Information Center of the Nanchang, alarms continued to wail. Commanders were locked in heated discussion. Was this an isolated strike, or the opening move in a coordinated American offensive? Satellite communication channels buzzed with urgent traffic back to the Eastern Theater Command in Ningbo. Beijing wanted answers, and fast. Beneath the waves, the wolfpack had not retreated far. The USS Colorado had drifted into a trailing position 2 nautical miles behind the Chinese formation. Its sonar arrays tuned to every metallic groan of the wounded carrier. The USS Delaware repositioned to the east, setting up a potential crossfire line should hostilities escalate. 6:25 hours. The Chinese destroyer Xianyang launched a spread of U-11 lightweight torpedoes into the suspected contact zone. These torpedoes, though fast, were designed for diesel-electric subs, not the deep-diving Virginia class. The the South Dakota easily evaded by slipping another 40 feet deeper into the cold layer. Her acoustic profile was nearly indistinguishable from the surrounding ocean, yet the Americans knew they could not linger forever. Every minute increased the risk of detection from China's expanding anti-submarine perimeter. So the Wolfpack initiated Phase 2, harassment and intimidation without outright destruction. From Colorado's torpedo tubes slid 3 more unmanned underwater vehicles. These were not mere decoys. They carried sophisticated electronic warfare packages capable of jamming sonar returns and injecting phantom contacts into enemy systems. Within minutes, Chinese sonar operators were staring at a screen filled with ghost submarines, each pinging from different angles. Up above, the P-8 Ampere Poseidon returned, flying a wide orbit outside Chinese missile range, relaying the carrier's every movement to Pacific Fleet Command. Through secure data links, U.S. naval intelligence watched the Chinese task force shift into a defensive wedge effective against surface threats, but dangerously exposing the carrier's rear arc to submarine penetration. 6:35 hours. The Chinese carrier's escorts attempted to close ranks, but the damage was already done. The Fujian's propulsion output had dropped by 15% due to shockwave interference in her starboard shaft bearings. She was now slower, less maneuverable, and more vulnerable. Captain Hartley, aboard South Dakota, considered a full kill shot. His fire control officer whispered, "We have a clean firing solution, sir." But Hartley knew the stakes. Sinking a Chinese carrier outright could trigger not just a regional skirmish, but a war drawing in multiple nations. The mission's success was not in destruction. It was in the message, "We can reach you anytime, anywhere." Instead, he ordered a coordinated surfacing maneuver, but not where the enemy expected. At 6:40 hours, more than 30 nautical miles away from the Chinese group, the USS Delaware broke the surface just long enough to be spotted by a commercial cargo vessel. That sighting would race through maritime channels, feeding into Beijing's paranoia that US subs were everywhere. 700 hours. The Chinese task force shifted course eastward, away from the Philippines and toward a rendezvous point with additional escort vessels. This was a public retreat, though Chinese state media would later frame it as strategic repositioning. For the US Navy, the objective was complete. The carrier group had been forced from its intended patrol route without a single American casualty or piece of hardware lost. Yet the operation was not without risk. The longer the Wolfpack lingered in contested waters, the higher the chance China would deploy long-range Y-8 anti-submarine aircraft, or even call in planned submarines from nearby patrol zones. That call came sooner than expected. By 7:15 hours, sonar operators aboard Colorado picked up a faint, low-frequency signature to the west, likely a Type 093B nuclear attack submarine moving to intercept. The Wolfpack now faced a choice: disengage entirely or prepare for a silent duel beneath the waves. Hartley signaled the decision: hold positions, shadow incoming contact, but do not engage unless hostile fire is confirmed. This would be the delicate balance holding dominance without sparking escalation. In the broader theater, the strategic ripple effects were already underway. Word of the ambush reached Manila by 7:30 hours, where Philippine defense officials privately acknowledged the strike as a deterrent against Chinese incursions. In Tokyo, the Japanese Maritime Self-Defense Force began a quiet redeployment of their Soryu-class submarines closer to the Ryukyu Islands, anticipating a Chinese countermove. On the diplomatic front, however, the Pentagon prepared a carefully worded statement: no confirmation of submarine operations in the Philippine Sea, no admission of engagement, only a reiteration of the U.S. commitment to freedom of navigation and the security of Allied waters. Beneath the surface, the Wolfpack slowed to drift speed, letting ocean currents carry them further from the Chinese group. The battle, if it could be called, that was over. But the message was unmistakable. The Philippine Sea was a chessboard, and America had just made the opening move with surgical precision. The question now: would Beijing see this as a warning or a challenge? 7:45 hours. Just when the Wolfpack began its slow withdrawal into deeper international waters, A chilling development appeared on South Dakota's passive sonar. The low, rhythmic thump of a second Chinese Type O-93B nuclear attack submarine, but this one was already in the Wolfpack's rear arc. Hartley's first thought was unnerving. They were waiting for us. The second contact was silent for several minutes, shadowing at over 30 knots, likely in an attempt to box in the U.S. subs between itself and the approaching contact detected earlier. If the Chinese could triangulate positions, they might force the Americans into a corner, compromising not just the mission, but the entire doctrine of Virginia-class invulnerability. 7:50 hours. Colorado reported a sudden spike in broadband noise ahead, an unmistakable sign that the lead Type O-93B had accelerated and was preparing to cut across their path. It was a classic pincer maneuver. Then came the shock. The Wolfpack's secure comms began to flicker. At first, the disruption was minor, a faint hiss. Then, bursts of garbled static. A high-frequency interference pattern began corrupting encrypted signals between the subs. Hartley's communications officer swore under his breath, "Sir, they're trying to jam us underwater." It was almost unheard of. Traditional electronic warfare was the realm of surface ships and aircraft, not deep-sea hunters. Yet here it was an emerging Chinese capability, perhaps tested for the first time in live conditions. Hartley had two choices: attempt to surface and re-establish satellite comms, risking full detection. Switch to preset Wolfpack coordination protocols, essentially fighting blind, relying on each submarine to execute its part without central command. He chose the second. 7:55 hours. The Delaware deployed a new class of UUV experimental shimmer drones, equipped with micro-turbines that created a moving curtain of acoustic clutter. The goal: to confuse the Chinese sonar picture just long enough for the Wolfpack to slip through the tightening noose. But the Chinese had their own surprise. From the forward Type O-93B, an HSQG-207 anti-torpedo decoy was launched not aimed at a U.S. weapon, but deliberately triggered to create a false torpedo in the water alert. If the Americans reacted defensively, they could be drawn straight into the ambush corridor. 800 hours. The Philippine Sea was now a silent chess match played in pitch blackness, every move invisible yet deadly. Hartley knew one wrong choice could escalate into an irreversible exchange of fire. And then, just as the Wolfpack edged past the southern flank, the second Chinese sub made its move, closing in fast. Hartley's instinct screamed, "This is the intercept." At that precise moment, a coded burst came from Colorado. Contact disengaging north at speed. The second Chinese sub had broken off pursuit without firing. No one on the Wolfpack could be certain why. Had the shimmer drones worked? Had the Chinese simply decided the message was sent? Or was this part of a longer game testing American reaction times before a real clash? The sea grew quiet again. But for the men aboard the Wolfpack, the sense of victory was tempered with unease. Somewhere in those dark waters, an unseen adversary had looked straight at them and chosen to let them go. The engagement in the Philippine Sea was never meant to be a traditional battle. It was a silent exchange of messages, each side revealing just enough capability to shape the other's future decisions. For the United States Navy, the operation demonstrated the precision, reach, and coordination of the Virginia-class Block V submarine Wolfpack doctrine. Without firing a single destructive kill shot, the U.S. forced China's most prized carrier group off its intended patrol route, undermining its political objective just days before a key regional summit. The choice to detonate the Mach 48 ADCAP mid-run rather than sink the Fujian outright was strategic restraint. It preserved escalation control, while proving beyond doubt that U.S. submarines could penetrate China's most advanced layered defenses at will. This was deterrence in its purest form, showing capability without crossing the line into open war. Yet the encounter also revealed uncomfortable truths. China's use of underwater jamming, coordinated pincer submarine maneuvers, and deceptive anti-torpedo alerts suggested an anti-submarine warfare doctrine more advanced than U.S. planners had anticipated. The plan's Type O-93B boats are not simply trailing assets, they are evolving into aggressive intercept platforms, capable of contesting even the best-trained U.S. attack subs. The incident is likely to ripple far beyond the Philippine Sea. Allies like Japan and Australia will see this as proof of America's continued undersea dominance and as a warning that China's rapid naval modernization is eroding the uncontested freedom U.S. submarines have enjoyed for decades. Conversely, Beijing will study the wolfpack's every move, looking for weaknesses, patterns, and opportunities to exploit in a future engagement. Politically, the United States has gained a quiet but powerful victory. The Fujians' forced retreat will embolden Southeast Asian nations to resist coercive maritime actions, while reinforcing Washington's narrative that freedom of navigation in the Pacific is non-negotiable. However, in the corridors of the Pentagon, the mood will not be one of celebration. This was a rehearsal for a war no one truly wants, but one that both sides are now training for in earnest. Every exercise, every patrol, every sonar ping from here forward will be read through the lens of this encounter. The final assessment. The Philippine Sea remains a contested chessboard. The U.S. still holds the advantage in stealth and precision, but the margin is narrowing, and the next time these hunters meet, the rules may be far less restrained. In the deep silence after the encounter, the Philippine Sea returned to its outward calm. No wrecks, no smoke columns, no bodies, just a vast expanse of blue concealing the razor edge upon which two superpowers had balanced for hours. And yet, every man aboard those submarines, every officer in the Chinese carrier's command center, knew they had stood one miscalculation away from a war that could have engulfed half the Pacific. For the United States Navy, the operation reaffirmed a timeless truth. Power is not merely in the strike, but in the choice not to strike. The Virginia-class Block V submarines had proven their ability to reach the heart of China's naval pride, to shatter the illusion of impenetrability. And then, with deliberate restraint, they had left the target afloat. That decision was as much a weapon as the torpedoes themselves. For Beijing, the lesson was twofold. First, that America's undersea reach remains unmatched, capable of penetrating layered defenses with precision and coordination. Second, that the U.S. was willing to expose just enough of its capability to make the point without sparking uncontrollable escalation. The challenge for China will be in deciding whether to respond by matching that capability or by attempting to overwhelm it with numbers, sensors, and risk-taking. But beyond the tactical and strategic implications lies the deeper message for every nation watching this silent chess game unfold. Sovereignty is not guaranteed by declarations or patrols alone. It is preserved by preparation, by alliances, and by the will to act decisively when challenged. In the end, the Philippine Sea incident may be remembered not for the torpedo that could have sunk a carrier, but for the torpedo that did not. It may be studied in war colleges as an example of controlled dominance, how to apply pressure without triggering the chain reaction of war. And it may serve as a reminder that in an age of hypersonic missiles, cyber strikes, and space-based targeting, the oldest form of naval warfare, silent hunters stalking beneath the waves, remains as decisive as ever. The stakes could not be higher. If restraint fails, the Pacific could shift from contested waters to open conflict in a matter of hours. If deterrence holds, the balance of power may endure fragile, tense but intact. If strength deters chaos. Peace demands power. If you believe in clear-eyed, unflinching analysis of the forces shaping our world's most dangerous frontiers, then be part of this mission. Subscribe, engage in the comments, and share your perspective. These aren't just stories, they are warnings. And every informed voice strengthens the line between peace and war. History is being written in real time. The question is, will we pay attention?